So good afternoon and welcome to Conversations with Candice. This is the first episode of what I hope will be a series of kind of Zoom room podcasts. So first episode, and I am joined by some of my very favorite educators and leaders from Indiana, which for all of you who know me as the Executive Director of CETA may not know, but I spent all of my educational life prior to this national position in Indiana. So both as, a classroom teacher and lots of different roles in a district level, and then at the Indiana Department of Ed, where I was so fortunate to meet these great people you see on the screen. So I just brought them together to be kind of guinea pigs on my first conversations today, just to talk about some of what's going on in learning right now and what that means to people. So I'm just going to let them introduce themselves and just say briefly, who you are and a little bit about your district and what's going on right now for you. And then we'll come back around with some other questions. Really want this to be a conversation, but what I'm seeing on my screen is up in the top corner of my grid, I see Stacy Schmitt. So Stacy, do you want to start?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Hi, I'm Stacy Schmitt. I'm the superintendent of Porter Township School Corporation. I've been there, this is my 8th year, and Porter Township actually started their journey into e-learning before I got there. So it's been at least 10 years that Porter Township's been working on e-learning. It has evolved over that time. And so while we've been kind of walking down this path for a long time, we're certainly in a new day as we travel this path on an extended journey now, e-learning for the long haul. So it's a new day and an exciting challenge for all of us as we figure out how to make this happen and meet the needs of students when we're not face-to-face with them every day.
Well, thank you for that. And we'll go around, and then I do want to come back and touch base with everybody on, what's kind of the difference between what it was like before and kind of the reality we're all in now, and then some kind of future thinking about that. So across the board, I see Tanya. You want to talk now?
Sure, I would love to. I'm Tanya Weaver, and I'm privileged to serve as the superintendent of the Garrett Kaiser Butler School District, which is in Garrett, Indiana. It's a rural community just north of Fort Wayne, so it's in the corner of the state. And we have about 1,800 students in our K-12 setting. We're all on one campus, which makes us a really unique school setup for us. And we have been one-to-one for about 10 years also, and actually began with e-learning happening on inclement weather days here in Northeast Indiana when we had to close school. But then since transferred into also using some of those days for professional development and that type of thing. So as Stacy said, it's a completely different journey now that it's continuous, and we're really trying to take advantage of some of that experience we have, but also we are learning new things every day with that. So that's a little about Garrett.
Thanks. How about you, Paul Ketchum?
Hey, so great to see you again, Candice, and thank you for the invitation today. Again, my name is Paul Ketchum, Superintendent, Batesville Community School Corporation. Batesville, Indiana is located in the southeastern corner. We're kind of equidistant between Cincinnati and Indianapolis. Batesville schools, I've been there as a superintendent about 4 years. Batesville's been one-to-one, 8+ years. And again, our biggest issue is not so much the devices, it's the connectivity. And I'm not sure about my rural friends across Indiana, but Franklin and Ripley counties, our school district covers 2 counties, is a wonderful place to raise a family, beautiful area to live in, but there are some barriers as far as connectivity. So that's our biggest challenge right now as far as the environment of e-learning or tech integration or remote learning. We're good at it, but we're always looking to get better. So I love to see my peers and colleagues on this call and listen to what they have to say.
Great, yeah. And connectivity is something I hear in so many of our national calls, and I'm on some committees working with E-Rate and with the FCC on trying to help, bring those monies and that connectivity beyond the schools to our home settings. So we're working on that daily, but yeah, we know it's a challenge. So coming across, Tara Bishop. Hello.
Hi, I had to unmute myself. I'm Tara Bishop, and I'm the superintendent at Perry Central Community Schools. We're in southernmost Indiana, right along on the Ohio River, and we serve about 1,250 kids in a very, very rural area. So I feel what you're saying, Paul, about connectivity. That's definitely a barrier here too. We've been working with digital learning, e-learning for a long, long time as well, because we got to be friends with Candice Dodson and the e-learning folks up at the DOE, and that was very much changed the trajectory of our work in around digital learning and really made us lots better at what we're doing. So it is definitely different now. Our folks have learned so much since this started. I mean, and I felt too, like Paul said, we were pretty good at this. We were decent at it to start with. We've been doing it for a while with professional development and inclement weather days, but the tools that they're using now and the way that they're connecting with their students live and through video and it's been really, really heartwarming to see, and I've been really proud of our people. So always looking for ways to get better, but yes, it's I'm also proud of the work that our folks have done so far.
Yeah, thank you, Tara. That is true. Heartwarming is something I would have to say. So, all right, Jamie, you're up.
It's always great to be friends with Candice. I think. I hope to stay on that page, so hopefully this call doesn't end that. But I guess I'd just like to start by saying congratulations to you, Candice, for moving from Indiana to now the executive director of SETA. Is an awesome move. It's great for our country. What we started way back when, seems like forever ago, was groundbreaking, and you were on the forefront of that. So I commend you for leading this challenge. I'm at Superintendent Mechanical School Corporation. We are 15 miles north of Kokomo, 70 miles south of South Bend, right on US 31. The big marker in our area is Grissom Air Reserve Base. We're 4 miles east of there. So that is where we are. We've got about 2,100 students here. We're rural, as a lot of my fellow colleagues are. So we service a wide variety of students here. We were one of the first 3, I think, schools possibly back on e-learning years ago, however many, 8-10 years ago, however long that has been. And I remember one of the first things we did when we were applying for the first digital learning grant was putting a team together of our alumni. And we had kind of a unique situation because of the air base. When it was fully active, we had people from all over the country stationed there. So we had a variety of different folks. And so we put a team together of alumni that were in the field of technology. And one of our alumni is a CEO of a technology firm right now. And when we were putting our goals together and looking at, what we were trying to do, one of our goals strategic plan was to be a leader in North Central Indiana. And I'll never forget the statement that this gentleman said. He's like, that seems very underwhelming, just to be a leader in North Central Indiana. I'm like, I think a leader in North Central Indiana is pretty good. But he had his sights a lot larger. So that always has stuck with me when I reach around to my colleagues and what we're trying to do with e-learning. And just as everyone else has said so far, we thought we had it down pretty good. I can't imagine just starting from scratch. All of a sudden you're thrown into this because we've been at it for quite some time, but we continue to evolve. And that to me has been our biggest success. Zoom meetings, Google Hangouts has been the norm. And, we will continue to evolve on these types of platforms for our students. So thank you again, Candice, for hosting this. That's my two.
Thanks, Jamie, and thanks for those kind words. And I want to say more a little bit about Indiana's leadership role, and that certainly goes to all of you. We'll get our last person on the panel today, David, my friend from up north.
Don't
tell us a
forget
little bit
Stacy.
about.
You forgot Stacy too.
No, we did Stace
Oh,
first.
you were started. Okay.
You did. It's that kind of day. But David, go for it.
Hey, thanks so much. And thanks for including me in this conversation, Candice. Again, we were fortunate enough to know Candice because of her roommate ended up being a teacher up here in Warsaw Community Schools. We were actually able to lure Candice's son up here for a little while as a teacher. So again, we've had a wonderful relationship. And Candice, you were one of the ones that pushed us from the beginning. Our technology director, Brad Hagg, through that relationship, again, we really started one-to-one just about the same time that everybody else was talking about, somewhere between 6, 7, 8 years ago. I think I jinxed it though this year because I looked at Brad, our technology director, and I said, look, you know what? It's not even controversial anymore. It used to be when we took those contracts before the board. I mean, there were these big contracts for one-to-one devices and, hey, you know, community members aren't sure about this technology thing and what are we doing? And I said, Brad, nobody's talking about one-to-one anymore. It's so quiet. That means that it's working. And then boom, the next week, all of a sudden we're in this new world that we're in. But we've been one-to-one on iPads. And James, I love the comment that you made when you said an evolution, because I think about where we were at the beginning with it to where we're at now. And you know, I've had so many people reach out to us and say, David, you know, we might have questioned those e-learning days to begin with because they look different. You know, especially as we use them for weather cancellation days. They said they look different, but could you imagine where we would be at right now if we had not had those to begin the preparation work for what has happened here over these last few weeks? And you know, that's been the blessing. I would say in that evolution, it got sped up very, very quickly, even inside of it, because what we saw as tight practices and really working, all of a sudden, you had to up your game. Another 3 levels here very quickly inside of this, because now it's not, we're doing one day and we're staying at potentially work that doesn't go forward that much. Again, trying to stay around that same place to, hey, you know what, we got to make sure that these last 9 weeks of school truly count for our students. And how do we create that? And how do we create a personal relationship? Because the situation that we're in, we do emergency management drills for just about everything else that is out there. But we've never talked about an emergency management or game plan for how we do things when we cannot have physical interaction with our students. Yeah. And it's changed the name of the game for all of us. But again, I keep going back to what everybody said. We're so incredibly blessed. Candice, again, we would not be at the place that we're at as a school system. And I guess I didn't even say anything about Warsaw Community Schools. We're 7,000 kids, Northern Indiana, smack dab right in the middle in a cornfield between Fort Wayne and South Bend. And we're rural, urban, and suburban all together. So again, same thing that other people mentioned with Wi-Fi access and some of the places that it's definitely not socioeconomic. It is rural access is the issue. So we'll talk about some of those things more.
Well, I will thank you guys for being here again, and really for all that you've been doing over these past few years. One of the things, and thank you for the kind words, one of the things I noticed right away, I had been a member of CETA, so had been representing Indiana in the CETA organization, which is all the states and some of the provinces and other groups. For a while, so I've been a member of that. I always felt like when I came to see it, and I think some of you attended with me, you know, I would feel pretty good and stand up a little straighter sometimes. Great learning and great opportunities going on all over the country. But I did feel like in Indiana, we had a momentum around bringing in digital tools and personalized learning and blended learning for families, more so than some states, you know, really in that kind of full state momentum. Of course, we've had pockets, even in Indiana, which is where I still live, but I really felt proud of it. And then as I've taken this role as executive director, and even before the COVID crisis, I could see right away that Indiana has really been out there somewhat on the bleeding edge. And as many of you have said, I have now been in conversations over the last month and a half with districts that, not only districts, but states who would not even consider counting a day away from brick and mortar as an instructional day, who then suddenly over the course of like 1 week time said, okay, in a week's time, we're going to take everything remote. They were on spring break and said, when we come back, all of our teachers will be teaching remotely. And that was literally the warning they had. And I don't want to even mention names because that would be unfair as I represent all the states. But there was a couple of places where we're talking about, hundreds of thousands of students, thousands of teachers who had never opened their Google Classroom, and suddenly we're told on the following Monday they would be teaching like that. And I thought about all of you, and I thought about the struggles we've had over the years, whether it's been the state boards of ed questioning it, legislators, community members saying, oh, this looks different, as you said, David, what's this about? But my goodness, to do this in the midst of a crisis, in the midst of, even for me, I struggle being the extrovert that I am. This is tough times. And it's been overwhelming. And so I count on Indiana stories and leadership so many times, but since other people will be listening to this, I'd love for you to share, because you have been doing this and all of you have been, with devices, teachers using digital tools, families interacting over the last few years. What has been one of the biggest challenges, do you think now? I know connectivity is one of those things, and we're feeling that and trying to fix that, if you will. So kids may have a device or they may not go home, not be able to connect. But beyond that, what other kind of things do you feel like has really been a struggle, even to your schools and teachers and families that are not totally unfamiliar with this situation? So, and anyone can talk.
I think the biggest struggle for us is that social emotional component. So while we may have had how to deliver instruction, I'm not going to say down because we're still tweaking that and making that better, especially as we deliver new content. It is how to deliver that social emotional connection. So through face-to-face interactions, but even if you're meeting in a Zoom class, little Johnny might not be able to tell you the thing he really needs to tell you that's happening in his house. And, so how to build in that connectivity and that engagement with students, because, this has rocked their world too. So their ability to understand and process through with parents who are stressed out and worried maybe about family members or getting sick themselves. This is a lot for those people, those little people, to process through, and they need the people that they trusted so much in a whole different way. And so we've had to try to figure out ways to connect with them, to allow them to be able to speak with us and connect with us in ways they're comfortable. But then we've also tried to make some fun connections too. Because, students are feeling loss of the things they loved, not just seniors with their senior experiences or athletics, but, their choir concerts or their band concerts, some of those things. So we've been trying to put in, through Facebook Live, we have a fun, weekly music time that it's not part of a class, it's just for fun, and it brings our community together to do something, so we're trying to build in touches like that. Our high school started a challenge that has nothing to do with a class. It's my administrators running it. It's a way to interact with their students individually. They actually started a challenge for their staff too, because we realized our staff is in this social emotional crisis as well. So I think those have been the pieces that we've had to try to figure out, okay, how are we going to address these needs maybe in a different way than we have before?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think that's everybody, like you said, it's not just students and families, it's staff members also dealing with these same kind of things, and just the loss of those kind of interactions. What other things are people seeing, or what ways are you meeting some of those same needs? I'm sure you're all having those.
Candice, I think one thing technology does, it shrinks the classroom and shrinks. We feel sometimes we're alone, but I think technology probably allows more one-on-one or small group settings with counselors and teachers. Again, so change, I embrace change as an opportunity to get better. And sometimes we're in brick and mortar schools, we have such tight schedules and standardized testing and X, Y, Z to get done. And now maybe we have a little more time to make personal connections with students and staff members and one another. And it really is amazing what adversity does to the teaching profession. I'm so proud of teachers across Indiana that have just come up with great ideas, and we're in a culture of sharing. And if Warsaw comes up with a great idea, I know that they'll share with me and I'll share with whoever else. So that kind of camaraderie and the ability to share ideas has made us better. And that's what I always look forward to these conversations, because I'm going to steal an idea from somebody, right? But the good news is maybe we've had a little better chance to connect individually with students who may not raise their hand in class, right? And now we're able to have a little more in-depth conversations.
Yeah, that camaraderie, I'm seeing that, just across the nation, and that is that high point. But I definitely think being freed from some of the restraints that are put on by scheduling, by brick and mortar setting, if we look to that positive side of that and we can have the right kind of tools, I do believe it provides some unique opportunities for interaction. But what else can we share?
I would say too, we're educators. We're all about relationships. That is the number one thing we all got into this business for. It's what our teachers got into this business, our instructional assistants, custodians, you name it. So we're all hurting during this time. And, what technology has allowed us to do is to continue education. And then on the other side of that, we reach out to people where we need to be. So when we originally started this whole process with e-learning, Candice, we surveyed our staff, and we were surveyed our community. We were about 87% had some sort of access to internet connectivity. So do you hold back on going on e-learning, or do you move forward because you've got 87% that have some sort of access? So what we did was we moved forward and then figure out the other 13%. What can we do for them? Luckily, we had a local business that was able to provide connectivity at a free rate for our families. So we continue to work with those folks, and we've added, hotspots around, and now, folks can come into we just did this 2 days ago. If you want to drive up and get connectivity at our high school, you can do that. So I think that's one piece of it, the connectivity part of it. And then there's the whole second side of the relationship part of it. And I'm just continually amazed at our staff making phone calls every day, reaching out to families we haven't heard from, providing food service to local pantries. Teachers have upped their game, and even though we're not face-to-face and we're able to do it, via technology, they have stepped up to the game, and that has been really remarkable for me to be able to kind of witness and be part of.
Yeah. Somebody else I know wants to go ahead, David.
I'll jump in here real quick and talk about even a couple of the challenges, because we've seen so much progression of what has happened. Some of it will go back into the box. Other pieces of it won't go back into the box. And that's an exciting time when we're talking about technology, because it won't be the same. Even when we come back, even when we have the physical pieces, it's not going to be the same, because our teachers have learned so much, our communities learned so much. I think one of the biggest struggles that we're going to have to figure out as leaders, uniformity has always been something that again has been stressed at schools. Even a lot of times, I know there are different versions of one-to-one, but again, we wanted to make sure that all of our kids had a same device. I think about just the platforms that are out there right now, because we've opened up just about everything to our teachers, because we said we don't want to stifle any creativity. We're going to have to decide whether we put some of that back into the box or whether we completely just let it go. And again, I think about even right now, we're on Zoom doing this. You know what? 3 weeks ago, I did not have a Zoom login. I had a Microsoft Meetings login. I had a Skype login. I had a FaceTime login, but I didn't have a Zoom login. And now all of a sudden I have a Zoom login. And even for our board meetings, we're trying to figure out what's the best platform for everything. So again, that's all changed inside of it. I think the other thing that has been really neat to watch is our kids are working as reverse mentors with our parents a lot of times. Our parents are technologically savvy on Facebook, but they are not always technologically savvy on whatever platform it might be that even our kids are using. And I mean, I've watched this in my own house. I have learned so much from my kids, remote learning and e-learning that's going on, because I'm like, I don't know how to do that. I never knew how to use Seesaw and get in the depths of it. Now, again, find out my son's been using this in his classroom here every single year for the last 3 years at the lower elementary level. But the reality is I never had to do that as a parent because he was doing it in the classroom. Now, all of a sudden, I'm looking at this saying, wow, you know what? This has truly changed the game of what we're doing.
David, can I just interject? As superintendent, I have 2 kids in the school corporation that my wife talks to me about e-learning. I'm going crazy. I mean, these guys know so much about how to get things done. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go do a Zoom with Candice today because they are on top of it. And it blows me away with how our families and our kids are really stepping up to it. And I have a reminder every day from my wife that 3 days is plenty for e-learning. Or, you know, I get constant feedback, Candice, on how e-learning should work. So
Yeah, you know, you guys are bringing up some points that I still want to hear it. Tanya and Tara, didn't mean to cut you out, but a couple of things that I've noticed in national conversations is one, and I'm going to try to find a diplomatic way to say this. Whenever there are these kind of, you know, unprecedented situations, sometimes people try to take advantage of those situations. So I have seen companies and other organizations try to step in. You guys are probably being bombarded with families, you know, we got a platform, we've got this to solve all your needs. I know from CETA's point of view, we're trying to be very selective about who we share. I know you mentioned Seesaw, Google, people, you know, we're trying to stick with companies that have been in this game for a while, and we know will be there for our families and our schools beyond. And so whether, as you pointed out, David, you decide to, you know, take some of those off the plate after we go back to whatever will be normal. And I definitely want to talk about what you guys think that normal is going to be, but you know, or if we're going to leave it more open. And I do think it's forced us to realize the world will not end if we give people access sometimes to things that maybe we're leery of. But we're trying to be very careful about, you know, sustainability. And you all as superintendents, you know there's a bottom line to everything. So beyond being, you know, thinking about instructional models and meeting the needs of all students, we also have to think about, you know, it may be free now, will it be free forever? And how do we sustain that beyond? Is it really the right thing? So we're trying to, and I've looked back to Indiana so many times and said, let's look and see what our districts are using. I know they've been in this for a while. You know, they're not just taking the flashiest thing that comes along, but you know, to that point that you made, David, there's, you know, opening it up. I commend you for that, because we all still do have to think about privacy. We have to think about, you know, making sure that our families are in a secure, kind of safe spot when they go through our districts and use platforms. But you know, I guess if there's anything, if anything has just been a lifesaver for you, you know, we've already said Zoom is a good one, Google Hangout, Skype. I think anything that provides some kind of interaction. So even the phone, if families, kids and teachers can talk, I know that's been huge. But anybody have any other platform nobody's mentioned that you've said, oh my gosh, this has been huge for our district, or something that these new states and districts are thinking about? Anything you would say you better invest in blank?
I would say this, Candice, from a district of 2,200 students, standardization drives professional development. But at the same time, you want to have diversified standardization because a kindergarten teacher's platform is much different than a high school physics teacher. So if you're just starting the game, I think you want to have a learning management system. We use Canvas, Google Hangout, whatever platform you use, you're able to that's your building blocks. And then once you have that foundation, that's when your superstars kind of rise and do things outside the box, and kids grow that way. But I just think schools, make sure you have some standardized professional development with the intention to empower teachers to go once because you're going to have different levels of learners, even as teachers. Just like we have different levels of learners as students, there's different levels of learners of teachers and administrators. So standardization.
That's a really good.
Yeah, no.
I liked that.
Yeah, you just got to have a starting point, and your starting point needs to be everybody at the same point, with the understanding that you're going to be at different points in a short amount of time.
Well, I think a learning management system is something, when I've been asked, what's something, well, you have to have a way to deliver that learning, right, out to your students and families, and that teachers can kind of rely on and get some stability in their understanding of it. So that your term, Paul, about standardizing that kind of, a baseline, if you will, for everybody to know they can get there. And I think about it too, you said it, Jamie, just even as a parent, or Dave, your kids, you don't want families to have to shuffle 15 different platforms to try to understand it either. So I do think having something to deliver your learning with families and do it in some way is a good point. What else? Any other kind of must-haves that you feel like have been good for your districts?
I think some way to actually teach. So if I'm visually teaching, so if it's Screencastify or some sort of way to share your screen and provide some level of instruction, I think there's lots of tools out there. But some way to actually do that visually and share and interact. I know for our teachers, I can't remember which person said it, but the idea that, we're not just spiral reviewing, we're not just, maybe moving the ball a little bit down the court. I mean, we got 9 weeks of new content happening right now. So that has been something that's been a necessity. I know I saw one teacher, a friend of mine, he actually teaches out in Washington. He actually had painted a chalkboard wall behind him. You know what, it gets the job done. And so he had the video when he was writing on his wall behind him. And I was like, good job, that got the job done. And it wasn't a tool, but it worked.
Right. So that's another good point. So delivering out learning, and then also instruction. We aren't just, as all of us in Indiana, if we were doing it for inclement weather days, it may have been, 3 or 4 days. We could do review. We could certainly hit on those standards that can always be gone over and over. But now, as you pointed out, we're into new territory in terms of expectations for learning. So some way of instructing, being able to screen capture, to record yourself and share it with your students. That is something I think even people that have been in e-learning before are trying to figure out, how do we do it? And sometimes it definitely is a low tech kind of a thing, and that's all right. Yeah. What else? Anything else? Yeah. Go ahead.
Go ahead. For us at Perry Central, it's been Screencastify has been huge too, because one of the things that we've done is continued to pay all of our, well, I think everybody's continuing to pay their non-certified staff, their hourly staff, but we are always talking about how we wish we had more time to do professional development with our hourly people, and they're always working with kids, so it's difficult to do it. And there's never, a lot of extra money to do it. So essentially, we've set up online training and done Screencastify, and we've done tons and tons of Zoom, and are doing professional development for all the teaching assistants and the bus drivers and the cafeteria staff. And so we're talking about a lot of folks who don't have any experience with technology, particularly the bus drivers and the cafeteria staff. That's just not their day to day. And the learning has been really fun to see. I mean, they've gone from feeling, some of them, it was sad, kind of were feeling really dumb in the beginning. It's like, you're not at all. You just haven't had exposure to this yet, and are now they don't have to ask questions anymore. They understand how to do it. And that's just been really, really neat to see too, that it isn't just our kids that are benefiting from that learning, and we're all learning a lot through that, and they are too with technology. My own children have learned tons because they're being exposed to a lot of new tools, but our staff have been doing it as well. And I just think that's a benefit I didn't foresee.
That's a really good point that you make. I hadn't thought of that. You know, we talk a lot though about there's just not enough time in the day. And sometimes, as you pointed out, Tara, with people that come in maybe on more of an hourly schedule, they're not going to be able to stay, you know, for long. And we need them in their roles when they're in the school. So now we are at a place where we can actually offer some more PD. So that is a good point I hadn't thought of, kind of an added benefit, if you will, to getting some of this time back a little bit, and using, as you said, Paul, like the technology kind of gives us that opportunity. Tanya, were you going to say something, I think, and then I interrupted?
I'd go back to the beginning when you talked about some challenges and that kind of thing, and just how it has all progressed on this journey. But really thinking about that balance you talked about with the social emotional piece, Stacy, for students. And we've also found it's been really, though, even though our teachers have experienced this for a long period of time, a different challenge for them doing it day in and day out, and knowing when to take the time to shut off. That when you have your home office all set up and it's all ready all the time, we found that our teachers are working like all the time. And
right.
So, you know, they're connecting with kids during evening and morning and late night and all kinds of things. And so that has been a little bit of a challenge that I think that we have to be really conscientious about, is how to help those teachers manage working in their home. And it's just presented a different dynamic. But then again, the other piece that I think Paul had mentioned is having that really strong learning management system. And the beauty of that is the kids they do the same thing when they're in the regular school, when they're in the building. And so they're turning in assignments in the same exact way. There's really no question about where to find those kinds of things. And so I think that has helped ease the stress of some parents who are uncomfortable with the technology. It's like, oh my gosh, like my kindergartner does know how to access that and turn everything in and watch the connect on Zoom and watch their teacher work with their teacher one-on-one, and then when they need to do it in small groups. And so that dynamic has been helpful as positive as well. So
yeah, it is that balance is something that, you know, I've been asked. I've been running a virtual team now for about 10 years, and people have asked me prior to even this, like, you know, can you talk about how do you work remotely? And, you know, it is you have to figure out, one of the hardest parts is that balance, because, you know, I come into my desk and suddenly I will look up and it's 2 o'clock and I have not had somebody stop by the door or have to, you know, it can be overwhelming. And I think people that are new to it, so like teachers, and I am one, and, you know, our heart is to serve our families and our children. And so if it's in the evening, it's going to be in the evening, and we really have to help them with that balance of life. And, you know, you just can't be everything to everyone all the time. I know one of the things I remember in the beginning of e-learning days that everyone said was one of the hardest parts was how much work is too much work, right, for kids. So learning, is it not enough? Is it too much? That was something people had to learn. So I think about these districts that are starting this with a week's notice, you know, feeling that need to, you know, provide 6 hours of, you know, learning. And you think, okay, let's be realistic about what a day looks like actually in a school. You know, I used to say so many times, like, you know, people have to actually have a break here and there. So I think the time management for both families and knowing what that looks like, and really, I guess a point I want to ask you about now is, so, you know, what is realistic? We talk about, you're talking about, we're introducing new content. Obviously we are. But I mean, we know families are dealing with a lot. So should our expectations, you know, how do we balance that? How do we decide, how are we going to get to the end of the year? What's that going to look like to say, yes, this child is going to progress from 3rd grade to 4th grade? Are we going to promote everyone? I mean, what are you guys starting to think about how the year ends in regard to, meeting expectations of grade level and so forth?
I think in Batesville, the conversation is less about how the year ends and more importantly, how the year starts next year. I think fourth grade teachers are going to teach a little differently than they have in the past, and fifth grade teachers and so on and so forth. But your initial question, and I like to hear my colleagues, in Indiana, we typically have 180 days of school statutorily. We now have to get to 160. We're doing e-learning 3 days a week. And some people are like, well, teachers are only working 3 days a week. And I'll tell you what, they might be working more hours now than they were on a 5-day-a-week schedule, just because there's so many different variables. They're working at night. They're having team meetings on Mondays. So I'd be curious to hear what my colleagues are doing to get to that 160. And to answer your question, when you peel back all the layers, I think depending on grade level, 4 hours of work, quality work a day is probably impactful because there's no passing periods, there's no restroom breaks, all those breaks we have during the school day. I think 3 to 4 hours of quality instruction is probably a doable number.
Yeah. How are the rest of you getting to the 160? I'd like to hear that too.
We're Monday, Wednesday, Fridays. I think, James, you mentioned 3 days a week. We feel like that is a good balance. It was really interesting, even after the first couple of weeks of trying out that, I took it back even to our board members, who a number of them have kids, a number of them have spouses that are teachers. And I said, is this a good balance? And they said, yeah, this feels like a good balance. It's not too much. It's not too little. It stays consistent. We felt like that was something that we wanted to make sure that as a school system, we stay very, very consistent with our kids, that creating a new routine, creating a new schedule, let's not mix it up and even go opposite days the next week or take more even time off. Again, we felt like spring break was still an important thing to have inside of our district. I think the question is still out there, and it still looks different, Candice, and it's something that we're working with our teachers on as we get to the end. I felt like their balance was actually a little bit better as we started out this process than it is getting towards the end. And I mean, I know we still have a few weeks left. I feel like some of our teachers are trying to jump ahead and say, wow, you know what, I feel like I need to cram a little bit more because they are missing some of those days and missing some of those pieces that we would normally have at this point of the year. And we've seen some of them extend those lessons maybe a little bit too far. So some of our conversations have been coming back and saying, okay, let's make sure that we keep this very manageable. Let's make sure that we keep this from a parent point of view of how to help out their kids, because some of these skill levels are past. I had a wonderful conversation with a businessman, very, very smart here in town. And he goes, David, I'm not a teacher. He goes, I'm struggling. And this is with my third grade son. I'm struggling because I just don't have those skill sets. And he said, it's great e-learning, it's wonderful, but he's like, I just lack that skill set. And so I think that's something that we have to remember. We have to keep coming back to, and it really is, what is that middle ground inside of it? Not too little, not too much. And then Paul, I completely agree with you. I don't think we'll know exactly what the impact of this was until next year sometime. Because I mean, as we look at our remedial pieces, as we look at our diagnostic pieces, we're even changing around our summer school. We're going to do a jumpstart program instead of a June program. And so 3 weeks before school starts, we're moving it to that. So that way we can really be inside of the diagnostic aspect of it. And again, maybe we'll be surprised and our kids come out ahead. I don't know. I'm going to be very interested to see what that end result is, but I think it's way too soon to be able to tell what it is and what impact and what we can learn, even if something like this ever came up again.
And it could, we know that. What else? How else are some of you meeting the 160?
At Perry Central, we're doing 3 days a week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, e-learning, Monday and Friday. They're waiver days for kids, but our teachers work 5 days a week and are also dealing with the balance issues too, because they answer questions, 20 hours a day, just about. And so we've had to talk with them about, it's okay to draw some boundaries. It's okay to have office hours. It's okay to turn your phone off for a little while and be with your own kids. But I, like Paul has said, and David as well, we're very concerned about reentry in the fall, and as much on the social emotional side as the academic side, because so many of our kids, especially really young children, we have a pretty big percentage of them who struggle with managing themselves socially and emotionally and behaviorally, and so to get them back into a routine is going to take time and a lot of intention. And so we've got a committee on basically how a reopening committee, and how are we going to do that, and what's that going to look like, and how might we even consider stagger starts or some sort of different way to look at bringing kids back, so that we can wrap more people and more intensive services around kids when we come back to school.
That's a good point, that, you know, that reentry, and what does that mean for some students who have been without scheduling, if you will, and been without some of the expectations. That's going to be tough. Anybody else want to share something? I know I'm probably impeding on your time now, but there's a couple other things I want to talk about, but go ahead, Tanya.
Yeah, our schedule is very similar to Tara's. We're doing Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then having teachers have that opportunity for collaboration and staff meetings and planning on Fridays when they're virtually getting together and doing those things. But we share a lot of the same concerns that Tara just mentioned. I'm sure all of us do, just about that re-entry and how can we really utilize our staff maybe differently than we've ever thought about doing in the fall, so that we can wrap some different support around students, and so that we can have a successful transition back into school. So I'm anxious to hear as we all develop those plans to be able to share them, because that is definitely something to consider.
Yeah, I do think we, you know, I'm part of some national conversations, and I want to ask specifically, a lot of people are saying, how are you going to do graduation? Like, you know, prom was a big concern, but graduation, like, is it people going to drive through and get their diplomas? Are you doing it virtually? Like, love to hear that. But one of the things, I was on a conversation this morning with some national leaders that said, for all of us that have been working in ed tech for a while, you know, definitely kind of in the limelight right now, people saying, oh, wow, we should have paid attention. But we're saying, aside from the really dark sides of this and the horrible deaths and so forth, for us, it's actually maybe the time to change education and to come out of this. So I kind of hope that we don't just go back to, you know, kindergarten, first, second, like K-12 inside. I mean, I feel like this could be our moment, right? To say, yes, that's a good situation for some learners, but not for a lot. And so what could education really look like? And I think about reentry. I think about, you know, Tanya, some of your districts have done customized learning based on mastery. Is that something we want to think about? How do we honor, you know, staggered grouping of students and time? And I don't know. I mean, can we forget about state assessments and really care about students? And I don't know, but this is a conversation happening everywhere. But I do know, and our time is coming, there's a couple things I wanted to ask you, but like, what do we think this experience could do to change education is one of my questions. Simple, I know. And, you know, what are we really learning from this that we think can impact education is my question. But definitely share with our viewers what you're doing about graduation, because I can't tell you how many times that comes up in every call I'm on. What are people doing about graduation? So anyone have a plan for that already?
We have 5. We have 5.
Stacy, could you share that with us? Now, what your plan is?
So we have, of course, our traditional plan, which is the plan that we want. But then we have varying levels of other plans, from outdoor graduation with, you know, chairs spread and socially distanced in a giant field of sorts, to outdoor students only. Still a more traditional model, but without parents, and we'll videotape it for them, but students would still get the experience, to the drive-in model where we would broadcast it, everybody would be in their car. Those are all the preferred models, with the loathsome model for my community being the virtual option. So we are kind of developing all 5 concurrently because we feel like we are held waiting for this guidance to come out, as we don't know what is to come. We can't predict. We don't have the crystal ball. So we are preparing the virtual option because we feel like we have to, and we don't want to be caught up. But we're willing to push our graduation into July. We feel like probably past August 1, we're going to lose our kids. But our community would love to see some kind of traditional graduation. And so we're trying to hold out as long as we can. And I think so far my favorite quote is from Candice Dodson that said something about loving and putting kids first instead of focusing on standardized assessment. That's my favorite quote of the day so far. I wish I could have gotten it written down fast enough when it came out of your mouth. Yes, that's an outcome too.
You know, I actually was in a conversation where some people were talking about, they said, well, you know, once we get everybody back in, you know, what is our grading going to look like? And should we give the report cards that, like, all this? And I was just like, are you kidding me? Like, is that really what we want to care about? Like, you know, I want to care about kids coming back in and feeling the love of and friendship and, you know, I just think this is a time in history that we need to honor. And, but we really have to care about those kids and those families and those teachers. And I hope that this gives us the opportunity to say, you know what, those assessments are not necessary, you know, but I don't know who else has a graduation plan they want to share. Anything different than what Stacy shared, or anyone made a determination yet? I know that's probably
Nothing different than Stacy said. We're going to keep our date and time Saturday, May 30th at 11 a.m. That's hard and fast. What it will look like depends on May 1st and Ripley County Health Commissioner Governor Holcomb. Is it virtual? Is it on site? But we just feel in honor of people traveling. We're not going to push it back. We're just going to keep it that Saturday. And what it looks like will determine as we get closer to May. My high school principal's biggest fear is making a decision now and then regretting it as we get closer to graduation. So he wants to slow play it and gather as much information as possible.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think also from listening to Dr. McCormick's, our state superintendent's webcast this past Tuesday, is that they're going to offer some ideas this Friday on what folks are doing. So I think we'll take a look at that, just as all of you guys are doing. We have to honor our seniors in some fashion. And how that looks is going to be probably a lot different, but I guess for me, it's a waiting game. We'll see what is mentioned this Friday in the governor's update and state superintendent's update to see more direction from that. But we're going to do something to honor our seniors. They deserve it, and it just stinks for them. You know, Candice, I mean, this is just stinks
it does.
for them. So,
it does. Yep.
Our plan at Perry Central is just like Stacy's 5-option plan, except we did set a date. Our date is Saturday, August 1st. And the principal and the assistant principal pulled in the class officers, and they polled their friends, and we just leaned on the kids to say, what do you want to do? Do you want us to go ahead and keep the current date and we'll figure out what the format's going to be, or do you want to push it? And it was the most important thing to them was that they could get together one more time, be in each other's presence. And so they wanted us to push it back as far as we could to see if we could make that happen.
So I'm sorry to interrupt. So you guys have set a date already? Then.
Yes, we did set Saturday, August 1st. We just did that this week as our graduation date.
Stacy, you guys did that too. I'm sorry I missed that part of it.
We did not set a date yet. We're just kind of holding out. But yeah, that August 1st date's kind of like our last possible option.
I mean, these folks they're moving on to school and doing other things.
Maybe.
So, well, yeah.
Maybe.
So that's our tough part in trying to decide on a date, you know, with
I do love, Tara, that you ask your student officers and ask them to ask around. Like, I mean, that's great. So many times, and I've been guilty of it too, where we all get together and forget to actually ask the students, you know, what we're doing with them. So that's a good point to like let them be involved in part of that.
And they really are the reason we set the date. They wanted a date. That was important to them. I think they just needed that. Like there's so many things that are uncertain, so that they could at least have a date that was certain. Then that allowed them to be able to handle all the other uncertainty a little better about exactly, you know, what it's going to look like. And we told them that our goal would be to finalize those plans by the 1st of July. That's all going to depend on, you know, how it all goes and the guidance that we get.
Tara, thank you for that, because I'm getting questions nonstop on my social media site about that. And I kind of work week to week. What does the governor's executive order say? What does Dr. McCormick's executive order say? And then planning for that. So you guys are going forward August 1, huh?
And I finally put out an FAQ that just, it's similar to what the DOE said, but so I didn't have to answer the same question a million times. And so my administrators aren't answering questions either. So I make sure the same information is going out to my community. So my community now goes and looks at the FAQ. And then it's funny, as I see on social media, a question comes out, I'll see a parent direct them to the FAQ, and I'm like, yes.
Stacy, that is
smart.
That
Yeah,
is so
that is smart.
That is
I'm
so
totally going to
good.
go find your FAQ now on your website, Stacy.
No kidding. Could you just
That
send
really
it to our community also?
Yeah.
So you don't have to go try to find it. I'll just respond to the email and send it to you.
Thank you.
Candice, this is probably off topic, but I just want to mention to my colleagues that I appreciate all the work they're doing. I follow them on social media, and the amount of hours that they put in, I thought, 8 to 5 was 8 to 5. And this has become beyond 8 to 5. This is nonstop answering of questions, emails, vendors. I can't tell you how many vendors that I get, and I love social media. It's one of my favorite things, but it can be grinding, and I appreciate what Paul and Stacy and Tanya and Tara and Dave and everybody else are doing, because I haven't found this to be an 8 to 5 job. I found this to be 24/7 emails coming in no matter when. I'm sure you get the same thing, Candice, and we want to definitely take care of our teachers and staff and everybody else, but also taking care of our superintendents that are dealing with this thing.
Yeah, I absolutely. And yeah, we'll wind up here, because I've kept you guys for longer than I meant to, and we could do this. I'd love to do this every week with you all and keep talking. I think we're always better together. That's the only thing I could say. And I mean this sincerely. If vendors are wearing down your door, send them my direction, because I really do want to hear who thinks they have a solution, and we're trying to vet that.
I'm sending them your direction.
Well, we're trying to vet that, and we have a partner page. So, we developed and I would be a bad executive director if I didn't mention it, but we have the Coalition for E-Learning, a whole portal that we've developed online. And one of those sets state plans and district plans. And we have Indiana as one of the exemplars there. Your state superintendent, Dr. McCormick, has been a steering committee member for us to help us with some of the feedback on this. But our partner page there, we're trying to hold that to, as I said earlier, companies that we know have been around this game for a while and continue to want to be there beyond whatever this crisis is and whatever reentry looks like. So truly, if you hear from somebody that you think really is, or you're working with them, I would love to know about that. And I'd love to take some of that off your plate if I could. Last, I'm going to have everybody go around and tell me one thing that you miss that has surprised you, that you didn't maybe, I think some of it's obvious. I haven't got to hold my grandkids that's hard. But that's probably a little given. Is there something that you've missed that kind of surprised you? I'd love everybody to share one thing before we say goodbye for today. Anybody want to start?
Handshakes.
Handshakes. Good one. Who else?
I think I miss walking through the halls of the schools every day. I just miss that interaction that you have.
Yeah, I get that.
You know, as a superintendent, I miss kids, right? Because our jobs, unfortunately, we're not sometimes involved with kids. And this just magnifies the fact that I don't get to see kids. That you said earlier, we all got into this profession because we love kids. And I love my kids, but I don't want to see them all the time every day. I like seeing other kids too.
I was going to say kids as well. As a matter of fact, I went through the drive-through at Wendy's at a town near us the other night, and 3 of our Perry Central students were working, and I was like their grandma who had just been starved to see them. I just kept asking them more questions, and they were like, "Lady, there's a car behind you. Go." I really miss kids.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, kids and staff. I had a staff member stop over to my porch to drop something off. And social distancing. She stood on one end of the porch and I came out and stood on the other, and we both burst into tears and then laughed. But it was a little surprising, but it was just, when you've been apart for so long, you miss each other.
Yeah. I think it's definitely the people factor. I miss traveling a little bit. I used to think, oh gosh, I have to travel so much, and but I didn't realize how much I really enjoyed being able to go to different places and interact with new people and hear about what schools are doing. So this is one thing, but I kind of actually miss the physical traveling to new places, and that's been hard. So
Yeah,
this
absolutely, Candice. I'd like to add to also missing the kids, but a unique perspective is my neighbor is the band director right across the street, and our house kind of sits down, so he can see every show that we watch, every sports center, every CNN show we watch. So the other day, I don't know what came over him, but he knew I was feeling blue. So he came out with his son and his wife, and they played our school fight song and you guys probably saw it on social media. So I just miss the interaction with people. And for our band director, who's brand new, this is his first year, to play the school fight song and his son be out there and his wife to be out there was just blew me away. So yeah, just like the rest of you guys, I mean, we got on this for people business, to be relational. And that's been the hardest thing for me to deal with.
Well, you guys keep doing what you're doing. I know it's a tough gig always, leading a school district. It's never easy. Now times are much harder. Whatever I can do to help, you guys know that. And I will promise you this. I've already been speaking with some others, and as soon as we can, I'll travel and gather. I'm going to have a cadre reunion again. We're all going to come together. I've already found people that definitely want that to happen. So I look forward to when I can actually hug all of you in person. But let's continue to have conversations. Thanks for being my first guest on Conversations with Candice, and I'll talk with you all again soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Candice.